Greetings everyone, welcome to this build guide. We are gonna take a look at the updated version of my custom crit Ice Nova Fire build. I did a one exalted build on this one right before this, and now I've upgraded all my gear, and I think I have come to a really nice balance between survivability and also damage. This build is insane on farming maps in general, as you can see from the tier 16 gameplay here in the background. Bosses are no problem, map mods are no problem, because you can run every single map mod without changing any flask, without changing any gear or anything. We can just val every map and just go directly. Things to know is that the Cosplay Malice, which are kind of mandatory for this updated version, is kind of expensive, but it doesn't matter. You can just use the one exalted guide to farm up the currency. I honestly did it in one day, and I only played for a few hours that day. So if you have the time, this build will carry you all the way to multiple exalted, if you're lucky, even in a few minutes. I did not, so I needed to farm it the good old-fashioned way. So without further ado, let's jump into the guide. Let's talk about the gear. Of course, we start with the unique pieces, which are Cosplay Malices. I run two of those. The stats that are important is cold damage to spells and increased attack speed. All the rest is it doesn't affect us at all, so just try to get higher rolls on those if you have a divine or something to throw at your Cosplay Malice. For our other unique, we use the Ephigon. The Ephigon is great because it's all the blinded enemies, they cannot evade your attack. That means we can completely forget about all the accuracy. This is why I'm running the fire build in general, because we have 100% accuracy. That means we don't need accuracy on any other gear pieces that open up so many affixes on all our gear pieces and all our skill tree and so on. Also, it gives us fire resistance against a blinded enemy, or damage penetrates, which is really good, and it gives us some dexterity, which we lack here. The only thing it doesn't give you really is life, which is, yeah, we still have a decent health pool, as you can see. Really good one, and we want to allocate Snowforge to it, because both cold damage and fire damage boost our damage. That's why I think this build is so great, because we can take from all sources. And right now there's a lot of cosplay players out there, or custom crit players, and the prices are kind of harsh. And if we're running this one instead of what 99% of all the other ones doing, you can get much cheaper gear out of it. Next, we're gonna talk about the helmet. I use a Warlord's helmet because the fossil craft for nearby enemies have 9% to fire resistance, minus 9%, is not possible to get anymore from the scorched fossils. So we have to have a Warlord influence on it. And of course, we could go with enchants like Ice Nova damage and stuff like that and put a Warlords on top of it, but I've not gotten that far, and I think it's not really needed. For my chest, I use a chance to gain frenzy shots on hits. Really good because it gives us attack speed, it gives us extra movement speed, and it also gives us extra damage, a lot of it. So I highly recommend this mod right here. And you and your minions take 100% reduced reflective elemental damage. Is also really good, because that means we can run all the LE reflect maps we want. And of course you want some life, some resistance if you can. Also, there's one more mod here I want, is nearby enemies are blinded. That means we do not need to run, where do we have it? Flesh and Stone here in Sandstance, because right now we're using this one, nearby enemies have blinded while in Sandstance. That means we can take that one out and use my aspect of the spider from a ring. That means a huge boost to both survivability and damage. But obviously getting all those free mods with a decent, I have not seen one of those chests out on the market yet, so we have to be on the lookout for that. For my gloves, I highly recommend to go with the bottom stat there that is not crafted. increased critical strike chance against shocked enemies, and it's always tied to the lightning resistance, so it's really good combo because we want 100% critical chance on this build. And of course, chaos resistance is always nice. I pick up chaos resistance a little here and a little there, and I have at the moment 49%, which is a lot for most builds, especially in the end game like this. Normally you only get that 75 or this high if you're running one of those, I don't know, Bane characters or even minion characters and stuff like that. From our belt, which is very important, you want 14% increased cooldown recovery. This is because you can see it as a train leaving the station when you are spinning around with your cyclone, and it triggers all our different spell here, which is our Frostbolt and Ice Nova and so on, and Wave of Conviction. If you're not there on time, you need to wait all the way to the next train arrives, and then it shoots out another Ice Nova or Frostbolt or Wave of Conviction. So this one, increased cooldown recovery at exactly 14% or above it. It does not matter how much you have really, as long as you have the 14%. That means you will make that train ride every single time if you have the right attacks per second. So the attacks per seconds we're after, and that's why we want high increased attack speed here, and we want the frenzy charges and all the stuff like that. Is, well, there's 2 points of this. The first one is 7.57. We want to be under that. So there's 7.57 right under that. We want in attacks per second, or 15.14, which is doubling up. I'm aiming for 15.14, but if you know you cannot get there or close enough for like 15 attacks per second, for example, if you cannot get in that little gap there between 15 and 15.14, then I would not aim for it at all. Right now I'm not really there because I want to change my boots, which we'll talk about now, because the boots can have tailwind mod. If I get the tailwind mod on my boots, I am at over 15 attacks per second, and this build will increase in damage a lot. So the things you see in the beginning of my tier 16 gameplay, it's just a little bit of my damage. As soon as I get to my tailwind mod, that means I'm gonna hit that train, as I was talking about earlier, consistently, and I'm gonna shoot out spells so much faster than I'm really doing now, which means a lot of damage boost. But I've not bought it yet, and I still need to look. I might even craft it myself with Awakener Orb. Then for the rings, we have 2 crafts I have here. This is why we can run all map mods. The Reflect from the chest, we can take care of those. But the other one we always is a problem is the no mana region maps, or no region at all maps. And challenge skills have -3 to total mana cost on both rings, means that our cyclone is gonna cost 0 mana. That means we can run every map mod in this game. And I also have some important stats on my ring, like curse enemies with level 5 flammability on hit, or you can use the elemental weakness or any of the other curses that you find likely. You can also put Val Orb to your gloves, which means that you can get some really good implicits on that one also. Then I just went with an insane vermilion ring here for extra. Of course we are starving a little bit on strength, but mostly it's because this has a lot of extra life. And I also crafted grants a level to 20 aspect of the spider skill in case I get one of those blinded mods on my chest. But right now it's just there and it's not doing anything for me. Well, so that is basically my gear. It's far from perfect, especially the belt, the boots, yeah, honestly the helmet also. I have still a lot of upgrades that can be done, but I'm looking forward to trying out new builds. So I'm releasing this now. I don't know how much I will upgrade it from now. So let's go to the next. For my Flask, there's not much to it. I have a Bubbling Eternal Life Flask for staunching here. Always have the bleed mod on the life flask, because if your life goes down, then you can just hit that. That is the reflex I have, at least. That means you're gonna take away the bleed. So it goes nice together. I also have recoveries, 50% recovered instantly and then over time, because sometimes you want overtime and sometimes you want instant. So this is a good middle ground. Highly recommend. Also put quality on all your flasks to make them more potent. The WoC, make sure that you balance your gear so the fire elemental resistance is the highest. Otherwise you're not gonna get the effect of the damage penetrate. And I see here that I should upgrade my flask to 15%. Obviously, as you can see here, it can go all the way up to 15. I had this one in the budget build and now I'm still using it, so there's not that many other options in this. You can also have Bottle of Faith, which is really expensive but extremely good. Especially for this build. I have not bought it yet. Honestly, it's quite overpriced right now. I think it's like 16 Exalted or something like that last I looked, but that was like a few days ago. So that is one also. That one takes care of a lot of extra damage and a lot of critical strike and also concentrated ground. Yeah, it's gonna help you a lot in this build. So if you have the currency for it, Bottle of Faith is highly recommended. But the problem is we need a few other mods, like the freeze mod or shield. So if you get shield or frozen, we need to take care of that. And I use it on a diamond flask because, well, obviously your critical strike chance is lucky. That it makes a lot of difference to get our overall critical strike chance to 100%. We're pretty high without it, but we're not going to reach 100% right about now. If you can, then you can just replace this one. Also this one, the Quartz Flask, chance to dodge attack hits, chance to dodge spell hits, and phasing. Phasing is really good when you use Cyclone. I would not switch this one because you can run through all the mods. Remove curses also. That means we have temp chains or any other bad modifiers, especially if like me, I'm valing on my map. There's bound to be at least one curse on you on tier 16 valve maps, and yeah, this one does a lot. It's gonna help you overall. Next one is Quicksilver Flask of Adrenaline. If you are choosing to take one of these away with a unique flask, then you might want to put that extra mod here on this one instead of Adrenaline. Increased movement speed is nice, but survivability and utility might be better off here. So those were my flask. Let's go to the next. For the jewels, we use one unique jewel, which is a Frozen Trail. You could use two, but I find that completely ridiculous because we already have so many of these frost balls. All we do is socket it in the right section, if we right about here, and that means we don't need to have them allocated, these intelligence nodes, to actually activate it. We just need it to be there, and voila, we have it. I also choose to get one with Corrupted Blood if you can, but there are like 4 exalted right now. It's just that the only thing I was really dying to was the Corrupted Blood here then, because you're running so fast, activating so many enemies, and especially if you're running Delirium, like the orbs you put on the maps. If you run 100% Delirium, you are gonna get Corrupted Blood on you. But it's a little bit pricey. You can put the Corrupted Blood on any of the other jewels if you want to. It's a luxury, but a nice one. Otherwise, we just want a lot of increased attack speed with swords, or any attack speed at all. I can leave a link in the description. If I don't remember, please write that in the comments, and I will put it up. All the jewels searches that I have, I saved them for you. So also you want the maximum life, you want fill in any resistance you need, increase area damage is always good. I mean, there's a lot of mods that here we can add, and I think I've added most of them, if not all of the beneficial things that I found most important. And yeah, because we can benefit from both cold and fire, that means it's really good, because there's not many people searching for that kind of combination. So let's get over to the cluster jewels. Those are a little bit overpowered in my mind. First of all, I will leave the cluster jewels here because there's a lot of mods. I highly recommend to go for the Doriani's lesson, which is right here, because 0.2 of elemental damage leeches life, that takes care of all our leech needs for this build. This node by itself takes care of everything. Obviously this jewel is gonna cost a lot, exactly like I have it here, because well, it has 1, 2, 3 pretty much perfect thing for my build, and it also have 2 jewel sockets. That is not gonna come cheap, and the link that I'm gonna leave in the description for this jewel is also gonna be for this specific jewel. If you want one with 1 less of something here, then obviously it's gonna go down to a few chaos, but if you want it perfect, then you have to pay for it. Other jewel that I highly recommend, and this one is not that expensive, it's like 50 chaos or something like that, or even below now probably, because a lot of people have advertised how overpowered this one is. It's Master of Fear and Evil Eye. This one, enemies you curse take 5% increased damage, and this one is the unnerved one, increased spell damage. That means as soon as you curse someone, this is 15% overall damage boost. That is huge for a build like this that does so much damage already. So I highly recommend to get these 2 nodes. And then of course you want it with a jewel node, so you can path all the way to Vettel? I didn't even know what that name means. I need to search it up, what that translates into Swedish. Increase maximum life and 20 maximum life. Of course you can get some other nice nodes. So this obviously is a really good cluster for it all. So this is how I did it. You can path it out like this. I did a lot of research on this and a lot of work went into it. So you can either copy it and trust me here, or even better, you can give me some suggestions for even better things. Let's go to the next. For the skill gems, we're gonna start with our 6th link, and of course we need, let's see it, Cyclone here, and because we're cycling around, and then we want cost on critical strike, of course, because it's a cost on critical strike build. That means as soon as we hit an enemy, and if our critical strike is high enough and our accuracy is high enough, that means everything that is tagged to this or linked to this is gonna trigger, which is our wave of conviction. Of course we can boost this Cyclone's critical strike chance by increased critical strike support, and obviously it's gonna boost this one also. And I also have Fortify for some extra survivability, but if you want a lot more damage, then you just change this to whatever. I like survivability more than I like to have insane level of damage, but if you put in any kind of damage node here, like I don't know, concentrated effect or something like that, and then obviously your damage is going to be much higher. And faster attack support is always nice. If you are not going for the 15 attacks per second or 15.14 attacks per second, then you are you can probably take this one out if you have enough on your gear and your jewels. But if you are, then you're definitely gonna need this one. It's pretty cheap to get 2120 also, so really good setup. Then we want in our left weapon, because it triggers like this. It triggers this one first and then this one. So we want our Frostbolt activate first, so our Ice Nova can trigger from our Frostbolt. Very important to have it. Same if you have it in your link setup, then you want your Frostbolt first and then your Ice Nova. Just something to note about these kind of builds. Frostbolt, we want the Combustion to debuff the enemy with it, and Cold to Fire support, so we convert everything here to fire. And the other 50% is getting converted by Avatar of Fire. You can also use Pyro Ring or something to to convert, but that's only 40% I believe, so yeah. Then we have Ice Nova, Cold to Fire to convert the last 50%, and Elemental Focus because we're not worried about triggering anything because we're a fire build. Ignite is a little bit meh, so we don't worry about using that. So Elemental Focus is definitely the best damage support right here. And let's go to our gloves. In our gloves we have a cost when damage taken with Steel Skin. Not too high, not too low. I managed to get this because I had the right amount of strength to get it this high. It procs sometimes. It probably saved my bacon a few times. And we have Precision. We don't really need this one. I just had the mana for it because obviously we don't need mana that much. We have a few skills that we use the mana for, but our Cyclone is completely free, so yeah. Summon Skitterbots. We want this one because it's both shields and shocks our enemy, because if we shield them we're gonna do extra damage, and we shock, and also it's gonna slow them down. So it's very important to have Skitterbots. It's gonna activate some of our like on the gloves here, for example, critical strike chance against shocked enemies. We're not shocking any other way, so we need this mod right here from Skitterbots. Also, it gives a lot more damage, so our Skitterbots is a multiplicative kind of damage when it shocks, so really nice. On our boots we have Flesh and Stone, and we have Herald of Ash. Flesh and Stone is there to blind together with Ethicon. It's going to give us 100% accuracy rating, which means that we have so many other stats we just can put other things on too. And Herald of Ash is obviously king here. It's burning overall kill damage, which helps with clear speed, and it gives us a lot of damage, which is very nice. Dash together with Second Wind. Normally I would use Flame Dash, but Dash is really good because even if you get slowed down by some of the bosses and some of the special enemies, Dash does not be affected by that, so you can just dash out in the same speed, which is really nice as a panic button to just get out of stuff. And with Second Wind you can basically zoom around on the map if you need to. On our helmet I have Portal because I'm lazy. Obviously you can probably use instead here increased duration jewel. That's what I had before, but I got so tired of carrying my portal scroll, so I took it out instead. Obviously for damage you would definitely need to use a duration jewel here. I have Vortex to activate my Arcane Search, and I have a Vortex here on my second bar, so here you can see it on my A button here, so it's not that I don't have it. And I had Righteous Fire, or Val Righteous Fire, which when I activate on bosses is gonna do a lot more damage overall. So this is basically my link setup. I would not change anything. I did a lot of testing. If I upgrade, I might to get in Aspect of Spider skill, then I might upgrade some of the gems, but I don't think I'm gonna get the chest piece that I want. The nearby enemies are blinded here, so not yet at least. Let's go to the next. For our passive tree, I would highly recommend to follow my One Exalted build guide, and I'll talk a little bit more in depth on how to path in this, but basically I would rush down all the way to Face Acrobatics because it's a great boost. Then I would take these much later, and then I would go all the way over here, start pathing into these kind of thing. And before Avatar of Fire is really good because then you can take all these nodes, which mean both fire damage and cold damage. And of course you want power charges because your Ascendancy is gonna get buffs from that, and some extra damage here. Obviously damage is king in the beginning of the game, because if you're running softcore, then, which you should with this build because I don't think it's a hardcore character, then you probably want to have the boost in damage instead of survivability, at least at start when you're generating currency. Then I would take some life nodes after that, and then just probably take these nodes last, And of course, if you have the right cluster rules, if you have the Dorianus lesson, if you do not, then you need to find leech some otherwhere. I talk about that also in the one Exalted guide, but you can get it basically from a mod of Presentis Fire Leech on your ring, so I would highly recommend get one of those. Otherwise, I think you have to pick up the straggling nodes a little bit here and there, and of course Snowforge is allocated on my amulet. This is very good. And last, I always picked all the Jewel nodes, even though they can be extremely powerful, much more powerful than many of the other ones, but it's tedious for most people to buy the right jewels until the end game when they have the right amount of currency for it. Yeah, so that is my passage. Let's go to the next. For the Ascendancies, we do not change from the one Exalted build guide, we just go with exactly the same. I took these opportunistic, but now in retrospect I would probably go Unstable Infusion and then Deadly Infusion, so I could switch over to custom crit much earlier, because these are kind of needed to activate the critical strike requirement to actually proc your spells. These obviously take care of your power charges and also gives a lot of critical strike and movement speed and so on. And then I would go for opportunistic, some extra movement skill. Again, movement speed is really good, and some extra damage and reduced damage against some of the bosses and stuff like that. And damage from critical strike cannot be reflected, can be good. That means we can drop the mod on our chest piece, but we need a lot more investments into our spell critical strikes, because as soon as one spell is hitting and not a critical strike, that means it's going to be reflected all the way back to you, and you're going to be dead in a second. And then we're going to take Mistwalker, extremely powerful. It gives us increased attack speed and cost speed while you have elusive. Really nice, because we want a lot of attack speed. And also elusive gives a lot of increased movement speed. It gives us a chance to dodge spell hits and attack hits, and yeah, it's a great survivability, and yes, great for clearing. So as you can see, we get a lot of movement speed, a lot of damage, and a lot of utilities from Assassin. Do not go with any other Ascendancies, honestly. And there we have the next. For the Pantheon, I always go with the same. It's Soul of Lunaris, fully upgraded, because some of these upgraded mods are really powerful. Avoid projectiles that have chained. That means you're not going to be shot off by something that is outside the screen or stuff like that. And also go with Sola Shakiri, because immune to poison. That means I don't need it on my flask, and there's always those poison things all over the place, or enemies that are always going to kill you really fast when they stack up the poison. So really recommend this one. But you can also go with Soul of Solaris, I guess. Obviously for bosses, this one might be good to switch over for. So like if you're doing Cyrus, then you would switch over to this one. But I'm not upgraded yet, and I've not been bothering, and I've done Cyrus level 8 with Awakener level 8, so without any problem. So I would still go with this one and just keep it, because I'm lazy again. So let's go over to next. For the bandits, I would recommend to kill them all, because obviously 2 extra passive points in especially endgame when you have maximized everything else is really good, because you can get 2 points that on a cluster jewel you can get way more out of it than, for example, Elira, which would be the second choice. You would get elemental resistance, and you would get the critical strike multi, which is obviously very nice, and mana regen. We don't need mana regen, we need the other 2 stats though, but 2 points it's gonna be better to use, and I can use those with whatever I need for the time being, and I'm not stuck with 2 of the stats that Elira gives me. That's all I have for you. We have completed a full build guide here. Hopefully I didn't miss any important steps. If I did, or you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below and I will try to get back to you as fast as possible. Obviously, if you have any upgrades, leave those kind of questions also there, or suggestions more likely. And hopefully you can put a like on this video if you liked it and subscribe to my channel for future content just like this. Have an awesome day, everyone.